Morning. Calling to order this meeting of the Conflicts of Interest Board. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to New York State Open Meetings Law, Public Officers Law, Section 102. For purpose of this meeting, I shall designate Julie Lee as the recording secretary. Today we have before us consideration of proposed amendments to Title 53 of the Rules of the City of New York. We're going to get a brief overview, an explanation of the proposed amendments, and then we can have a discussion of the amendments.
So the proposed rules address two areas where the board has repeatedly and regularly and over a long period of time given consistent advice, and one issue of housekeeping. And recently the board has received feedback about how it publicly announces its interpretations of the law and how best to encapsulate these interpretations in the most authoritative and defensible way. And as a result of that feedback, staff has begun reviewing the board's advisory opinions, formal advice, and informal advice to identify areas which we believe are sort of ripe for formal rulemaking procedures. And we have identified two areas. The first being the definition of firm, defining entities which are not firms for the purposes of Charter Section 260111, and the second being the definition of a business or financial relationship for the purposes of Charter Section 2604-2014. And in each of these, the board has enunciated in several advisory opinions entities which are exempted from the definition of firm because they are similar entities to entities listed in 260111. They are local development corporations, government agencies, or similar entities to those. In Charter Section 2604b14, the board has expressed in its advisory opinions and in enforcement cases a number of relationships which are prohibited relationships for superiors and subordinates to enter into. And these include relationships such as the sale of a house, the lease or co-ownership of property, or the loans of money. And then the third thing that we're doing is it's a bit of housekeeping, relocating four rules in the annual disclosure that address the administration of the annual disclosure law from Chapter 1, which is titled Conflicts of Interest, into a newly created Chapter 4. Which will be titled Annual Disclosure, which will contain all the rules necessary for the administration of that law. And at this moment, that law remains unchanged. Those rules remain unchanged. So this is the beginning of the process. These are some of the initial areas that we've identified where we believe that board action would be helpful in encapsulating the board's existing jurisprudence in new rules.
Okay, so why don't we begin? The draft is technically divided into 5 sections. We can probably just do it section by section. The first section, actually, I think does what you described last, which is create the new Chapter 4, which will be focused on disclosure, and moves what had been former Rule 108, former Rule 110, former Rule 114, and former Rule 115, and now has them as Rules 4-01, 4-02, 4-03 and 4-04, but utterly unchanged in their text, right?
Correct.
Any questions or comments about the new section 1? Section 1 of the draft. I think we can move on. Section 2. Sure.
I didn't have any question on the draft of the section. Just had some questions on the commentary. Not necessarily the draft. And then generally,
on this particular, on the disclosure stuff.
No, not on the disclosure, generally. Like
Why don't we do this section by section, and then we can do things that cut across everything at the end. Does that sound okay?
That's fine.
Say, hold that thought. So section 2 is, so it deletes old 108 technically and inserts in its place a new 108, which deals with the question of other similar entities who were exempted from the definition of firm for purposes of Charter 260111. I had only one question or suggestion on that one. It's on page 18, line 4. you say the term other similar entity means. I would be inclined to use language similar to what you use for the next section, which would something like includes but is not limited to, because there may be new, this is simply decisions that reflect, these are sections, subsections that reflect specific requests in the past. There may be entities that are similar to these that come before us in the future, where the principles that support A through J would support them, and I wouldn't want us to be foreclosing that. So I would say something like it includes or means but is not limited to, which is the language that you use. Includes but is not limited to, which is the language that you use for the next section, or some language that doesn't mean to shut this down.
I think the includes but not limited to answers my question,
Okay.
which was why is the Postal Service, which is, I think, a federal agency, similar to other federal agencies like the SEC. Yeah, there are a lot, there's a whole list. So then I thought, well, why list this one? Then it would seem kind of exclusive. But having the other language, and I think it's just fine to note that we're just using examples that have come up in the past.
The Postal Service was included because the board spoke specifically on it.
No, I get that. No, so that's the reason that it doesn't mean this, but it includes these, and these just happen to be a list of things that we've considered specifically.
And so I just wouldn't want something to be said that we couldn't go further because we have a rule. So and obviously we would reason behind the kinds of things that led to this rule in future cases. And indeed, if we want to focus on the rule approach more, we might amend the rule to add new entities as they come up.
Once the rule is created, of course, the board can add entities to it.
But I just wouldn't want seeing this to be shutting anything down. So I would just say includes but is not limited to, which is language similar to what you do in the next section.
So this would not be the exclusive list. What we would add is includes. These are just examples. And we have, each of these, we have already said that these are
Yes.
exemplars. There's, including the United Nations, which the city often has an adverse relationship.
Yes. Each of these has been sort of the subject of specific board advice where the board said it is not affirmed for the purposes of 260111, which means that a public servant can have a position with them without requiring a waiver of 2604A, but all the other restrictions of Chapter 68 continue to apply. So, for example, a public servant with a job at the United Nations would still be prohibited from communicating with a city agency on behalf of the United Nations if, for example, they were hired as a consultant.
I mean, it just strikes me as we have like the Brooklyn Public Library, the Queens Public Library, and not the New York Public Library. That's probably assuming because it never came up before.
Well, it both has
Or if
not,
there's something distinctive about the New York Public Library that we wouldn't list it.
it both has not come up in this specific context, but also the specific board composition of the New York Public Library is different. It does not include the government control that features in the Brooklyn.
Elected officials don't appoint to NYPL, there's just a couple of ex officios on it.
The Staten Island Public Library is here.
So with, I think, minor change of includes but is not limited to instead of the word means, is there any, we'll do a vote on everything at the end, but is there any further discussion on section 2?
Just a technical question. The local public authority, is there such a thing? Public authorities are all established in one state. I'm not sure technically about the local public authorities are public entities. Statute. I'm not sure there's a local public authority.
The phrase local public authority was sort of is part of our informal consultation with the law department in reviewing the rules, but we can look at that.
Yeah, that was a recommendation as part of our, from the law department as part of our informal consultation with them about the rule before we're even here today.
Could you question them specifically as to what they meant?
Yeah, perhaps what they meant is jurisdiction is about us, but.
Right, a state public authority whose jurisdiction is in.
Yeah, I agree with that phrase, yeah, the term is odd.
There will be commentary, there will be comments to these rules? Question mark, I mean, is that something that could be addressed in the comments? We normally have some kind of comments on it.
We can include discussion of this in the commentary.
Because this is not, Jeff, so right, this is not a technical term. And maybe, as opposed to Brooklyn Public Library, so maybe worth some comments as to explaining. And actually, your answer to me about why the New York Public Library is not in this and some things that are, that might be something that should be in comments as well about the presence or absence of government officials on their boards. I think that's, or government officials in their governance, whether it's federal, state, or international. I think that might be otherwise, one does look at it. Not one I looked at this and so white Greeks in Brooklyn and not New York, and now I have an answer.
But I do have a point of clarification, though, because I understood that all of these, all the items on this list were based on prior AOs. But Ethan, you're saying that item C, the New York local public authority, that was based on consultation with, informal consultation with law department, not on a prior AO?
That's correct. They advised us to include that.
Okay, so are there any other items on that list that are not based on a prior AO?
No, that is the only one on the list that is not addressed in the prior advisory.
Okay.
So that's not an omnibus term for a handful of other entities that they're being labeled New York local public authorities as a way of describing them collectively, not individually.
No, my understanding, and we will go back and confirm this. My understanding is that it was intended to capture the same idea that's actually in the rule about local development corporations and public authorities. This rule is intended to define the phrase other similar entities, and so I think we're suggesting these are in fact fit into that description. We will circle back to that.
To get to specifics, I believe that B would refer to New York State public authorities, things like the New York State Power Authority, whereas C, local public authorities, referring to things like sewer districts or things like that, which might exist on Long Island or upstate. But we will confirm that.
And we can provide examples of that in the commentary.
Okay.
So the commentary would make clear that these are entities that we've already addressed, but that any other entity should request moving forward. Because I'm just concerned that people look at this. There are things that may be here or may not be here. I think we should make it clear that these are things that we've already addressed.
Except they're not all, right?
Except for the
one. That's why I had
And
to
it
follow the
includes,
question.
but not limited to, would seem to imply that there's going to be more examples of this.
does.
We just are not giving it a private list.
And that's consistent with the comments that say this grows out of our prior advisory opinions, since most of these were named in prior advisory opinions. So, it's a non-exclusive list because our prior advisory opinions didn't address all possible entities. But this is, and there are some principles that lie behind this. If we could actually put some principles that lie behind this in the commentary, like public officials sit on their boards, if that's one of them, that would be helpful in helping resolve future cases. I don't know what I mean. Presume that while it's going back to the advisory opinions and seeing what the reasons were in each of those cases as to why a particular entity was considered to be an other similar entity, and maybe distilling that a little bit, putting it in the comments. Further on this one? So now we're up to the section 3, which gets rid of old 110, which has already now been moved into 4, and creates a new 110 on the definition of prohibited business or financial relationships between a superior and a subordinate. I had 3 or 4 things. One is minor, is whether the title should say between a superior and a subordinate, since I think the exclusive focus on this is relations between a superior and a subordinate. It's not about business and financial relationships generally, although that's, I think, a minor point, but you might want to think about it. The other points are with respect to numbers 12 and 13. I found it confusing when it says serving as a trustee of a trust established by another public servant in which another public servant or a person associated has the division. Are you talking about a third person You're talking about the superior, the subordinate, and another? Or are you talking about, is the other one the superior, one the subordinate? Another public servant, when we've already got superior and subordinate up in A, strikes me as we're talking about third parties. I didn't think you meant that. I thought this was one where you're talking about the trustee relationship between superior and subordinate, but the way you've got it written, there's a third party involved.
In each of these, we could break it into two. The first example would be a trust established by a superior or a subordinate, so in which there would only be two parties, and you are the trustee appointed by your superior or your subordinate, and that would be a prohibited relationship.
Right.
The second scenario is to be the trustee established for the benefit of a superior subordinate by a third party. So if a third party settles a trust and establishes you as the trustee for that trust, and the beneficiary of that trustee is your superior subordinate, we would also consider that to be a prohibited business or financial relationship.
Two thoughts. One is whether we then create into two separate sections. I find it very confusing. Because as written now, it's not clear that it picks up one between superior and subordinate. Serving as a trustee of a trust established by another public servant. Includes but is not limited to serving as a trustee. I see you've got the third party. In which one of, I don't have the language, but the way it's written now, I found it wasn't clear to me what it was doing. It sounds like it's doing two different things and maybe needs to
Is
do
it
different
only the
sections.
superior subordinate piece? I mean, that's what's missing, or
Right,
is that the
yeah.
only piece that's limited? That's not how I read it.
Well, because this is only defining it for the purposes of 2604P14, this only applies to
That's
relations
fine.
between superiors and subordinates.
I mean, I saw serving as a trustee of a trust established by one of them, or in which one of them.
By a superior or subordinate, or in which the superior subordinate has a beneficial interest.
Yeah, something like that, or a person associated with them. This could be the parent, child, or whatever. Yeah. I think it was cumbersome, and we know that had similar reactions. I think it's a simpler way of doing the next
Is
one.
that answered though, Richard, if you change the title to say superior and subordinate, then you wouldn't have to keep repeating it?
Well, that was another thought, is that from 1 through 11, nothing is repeated.
Right.
And so I think avoiding serving as a trustee in which one of them is a beneficiary.
It's really
Or established
another
trust.
public servant that confuses me.
Right, right.
That another,
Right.
that's the
I would say serving as a trustee of a trust in which one of them is a beneficiary.
Or
Is that-
established a trust?
Serving as a trustee, establishing a trust, or serving as a trustee of a trust of which one of them or a person associated with that public servant is a beneficiary. Does that do it?
Or established?
Right.
Right. Establishing or serving.
Right. As a trustee of a trust in which one of them or a person associated with one of them is a beneficiary. I mean, you might want to make sure that that's what it wants to.
But that doesn't hit the point of serving as a trustee, where neither is the beneficiary.
As long as neither the superior nor the subordinate is establishing the trust, it wouldn't be a relationship.
Well, if a superior, right, if a subordinate establishes a trustee for the benefit of another public servant, we don't have a problem.
Right.
The way it's written,
Right,
it
right.
says you can't serve as a trustee of a
Which is why I
trust.
think we're changing that.
I see.
Yeah,
So it's just
So-
not-
So it's establishing a trust or serving as a trustee of a trust in which one of them, or a person associated with one of them, is a beneficiary. You might want to just, after the study, make sure this gets at what you wanted to get at, but I think it does. And if it doesn't, come back and revise.
This,
On that one, and I have something on 13 and on B, but if we're on 12, keep going. Or
I'm
maybe
not
on
at 12, I'm back on.
Oh, good, sorry, then go higher up, sure.
Go. First, shared ownership of real property, should it include personal property as well, car, owned? I mean, there are certain relationships, natural relationships we can have involving personal.
Yeah, I think that, that's supposed to be captured in A2.
Well, that's, two seems to be one buy-sell relationship. I think what Jeff is getting at is an ongoing, shared ownership of a car, I think is the most likely form of personal property that's going to come up. Could be a piano, but most likely it's a car. It could be a boat, or an airplane. So why don't you just make it property?
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
The other, the shared ownership interest in a co-op or condominium apartment, fewer than 6 units. I mean, what about a single share ownership in a condominium apartment? What difference is it going to make?
Our concern was being over-inclusive, that would capture coworkers who might live in a very large condo or co-op complex. We wouldn't want to say that public servants who might live in, for example, a large condo complex like a co-op city, have a prohibited business or financial relationship or would otherwise need a waiver for that. We were thinking that 6 was a number that was sufficiently low to capture a situation where public servants are living in very close proximity to each other and effectively own property together, as opposed to a more removed relationship.
It's the shared ownership, I think, is,
Well, it's the shared ownership in the apartment, right?
They may own shares in a co-op, for example, but those shares are not shared with each other.
I think
They're-
it's the word apartment that.
can this be done without the word apartment? Can we call the entire entity a condominium? It's not the shared ownership of a condominium apartment. That's probably where you picked up with shared ownership of property. It's the shared ownership of an interest in a condominium. It's the condominium
This is
apartment I think that's
really
throwing everyone.
tricky.
Right. If they're sharing ownership in an apartment where the building was 1,000 units, we'd still be troubled.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Is this one also based on prior advisory opinion or prior precedent that might have dealt with in the past?
This is not based on a prior advisory opinion. This is, if I recall correctly, this was also something that we developed in consultation with the law department, and sort of in reviewing our advice to public servants, that we generally don't advise public servants who own apartments in co-ops or condo complexes that they have prohibited ownership of interests with their security supporters if they happen to live in the same complex.
If they live in the same complex.
Right.
Well, what if you lived in a building, in a brownstone with 6 apartments? And they're all, it's a co-op. Where's the concern?
Our concern is that it's such a small number of people that effectively the superior and the subordinate are bound together in a financial way that wouldn't be true if it was a condo or a co-op with 20, 30, 1,000 units. And if that is the case, a waiver would be possible.
I would think the smaller the co-op, let's just call it, the more likely there is that you're owning it together. I'm thinking of the 2-family houses where people are secretly dating or they're owning it, but it's not, thinking of that. But right, if you just happen to live in your coworker's small building, you would just apply for a waiver.
Maybe the trick here is to either delete the word apartment or replace it with the word building.
Word at all.
Maybe do we need it? I mean, do we even need it at all?
The whole section, you mean?
But, because what I thought the whole purpose of this, Anthony, the whole purpose of this, I thought, was that we have clear guidelines based on precedent. We wanted to provide them to the public officials they could see. These are the things that are prohibited. Number 10 seems to be really fact specific, and I'm not hearing that we have a prior precedent or AO that lays out this in a specific rule. So I'm concerned that we're trying to put this into something that may not necessarily be where we want to have it. So that's my concern, is this conversation, I mean, we're talking about all these various...
It was creating a problem where there was none.
Yeah.
Yet.
This to me is inherently a fact-driven exercise. So I'm just throwing that out there for discussion. Maybe we just remove it.
Just to clarify, so we don't have an advisory opinion that deals with this specific situation? So we might want to delete this one, since if the theme here is that we're basically codifying advisory opinions, we're not on this one. And it's sufficiently quirky and even hard to define that it may not be worth the effort. Jeff, did you have more?
No, okay, the cohabitations, is that different from sharing expenses?
We're trying to capture living together where one person is to pay. And there have been enforcement dispositions that have found that to be a business or financial relationship.
Okay, turning the page. On 13 again, I had trouble with payment of another public service. Sounds like again a third person. Did you mean payment of each other's recurring expenses, or even given the title, it's very important, payment of recurring expenses, which is the equivalent of purchase and sale and cohabitation. It's like a lot like cohabitation. I don't know that you need anything there. Payment of recurring expenses, since it's all bracketed in the relationship of spirit subordinate. If you do need something, I would say each other's, unless you really meant paying a third person, and I don't understand why that would be here.
I think you would need each other's, but.
Each other's is fine with me. And then I have one last one. B1, what does shared communally mean? Is there a community? Is it more than two people, or what is this about? What is this about? What is a benefit shared community?
Something where all the participants in this activity are receiving the benefit of it. And the example of coffee clubs and carpools is really what we have in mind here, is where a superior and subordinate are each buying the can of coffee, they have the coffee machine, and everyone's getting a couple.
But instead of communally, do you mean like equitably? I mean, otherwise shared does the work. If it's, I'm not quite sure what communally does. If you're saying that everyone share the benefit, it's shared. If you want to get across what you have in the second two, which is each bears a fair portion of the expense, I take maybe what you meant here is each gets a fair share of the benefits. So I would say shared. I would either say nothing, drop communally, or replace it with equitably or fairly. I mean, which is what you're shared, or just leave it at shared. I mean, I was a little thrown by community. That's all.
I was thinking of the carpool where I'm
Right.
going way out of my way to pick you up,
right.
but it never goes the other way.
I was thinking it's probably carpools, but I wasn't just sure what community was doing. That's all.
Taking it out is a good idea.
And if you eat it together with two, it makes it different.
Yeah.
Anything further?
Just I can get that. $25 limitation, is that too low?
No, this is an A2?
Yeah.
Oh, A1 and A2.
Yeah.
7 and line 7 and 8.
This is straight from an AO that's been around, from 1998. The board has had a lot of enforcement dispositions on this $25.
Do we want to inflation adjust it? You said 1998, I'm guessing now $50 might be
Like
closer to
$75.
$25.
Consistent with the gift for this, was it 50 or 75 now?
The gift has been $50 from the beginning, but the $50 number was always intended to just be de minimis gifts. And it wasn't a number suggesting that a $45 gift was okay. It was suggested for like t-shirts and promotional things, gifts that were of virtually no value, and $50 was determined by the board at that time to be the most no-value gift that someone could accept. I think my view of how most agencies deal with this is they want no sales in the
Or no
workplace.
loans.
Or no loans, and so $25 is just like, it's intended to be, we both go out to lunch, and I left my wallet in the office, and you can buy me a sandwich today. And that's not a business or financial relationship.
Right.
That's what that's intended to be.
So 25 is low.
It is low, but
I think it's purposely low.
it's purposely low because it's really intended to be these like one-off nothing things and not to be regular sales between superiors.
So what I'm saying is, in terms of those one-off nothing things, you don't have your wallet or somebody that pays and you pay them back when you get back to the office, and it's $26. Maybe it ought to be 50 consistent.
question is, what is nothing these days?
Right.
Right, in our view, in our experience and the stuff that's come to the board, $25 still feels like the right number.
And 25 does get across the point that it's not possible to really do that. You shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
50 is a little,
You want to make it share to show property worth value than $25 or more to be
I
internally
don't know,
consistent?
I don't know.
Or
That's,
$100 or more, are you thinking something of real?
I'm just confused now thinking about it. When it was real property, it's anything. You have a lot somewhere that's really worth nothing. It's still land that's worth something. Property, and then now talking about the concept of our loans, you shouldn't be making loans at all. 25 kind of drives that home a little bit. It's very small things. Any property that you own, I don't know what that would be. I don't really know what that would be.
Well, we moved to real to personal as
That we
cars, boats,
share, right, but what?
bicycle. And it could also be intellectual property. I don't know.
The
It could
bicycle,
co-owners
I don't
of a
know,
copyright.
right.
And once we go to property, it could go as a co-owners of a copyright in something.
So just
Or-
leave it
or
and address it
trademark
as it
or a
comes out.
patent. I would either leave it, or if we're going to add a dollar sign, I would be consistent and add $25 if you want to have a de minimis exception.
I see a trademark worth more than a bike, I'm just saying, or a
Right.
car. I could understand with a car or a boat.
Right, I mean, that's the, sort of the benefit of leaving it as real property, is that we haven't, at least in my experience, had a case of joint ownership of a car or a boat or any other kind of personal property. in
We've
a
had
board.
sales of the car.
Sales for sure, not joint
But
ownership.
we haven't had ownership.
That's a vote at one point.
Not to my recollection.
But it wouldn't be unusual.
There's a sale of them.
Sale for sure, joint
No, we're
ownership,
talking about ownership.
joint ownership we haven't seen, joint ownership of real property we've seen.
We've had this.
Yes, shared ownership
Yeah,
of
we've
real
had
property, we
sales
just
of
haven't,
property.
right, and sales of all kinds of things. Just the board hasn't had experience with that, so it's more difficult. We endeavor to not put the board in the position of making rule decisions without facts to inform those decisions. That's why we tried to be as conservative as we could in crafting what these things would be. So we could go back to real property and then, again, as as the board discussed in relation to the prior rule, amend it as experience requires.
So we have two questions on us now. One is, do we leave for A1 and 2, do we leave the $25 in place, or do we raise it to some number like 50 or 35, whatever anybody
I'm
prefers?
comfortable with the 25.
Anybody, I know Jeff was interested in raising it, anybody else interested in raising it? Or 50?
I would also note that the board is in fact sort of anomalous in the $50 gift rule. Most city agencies have a $0 gift rule, so that $50, the board is now the outlier in that. The $50 is not really the number in the city.
Fernando, Anthony, thoughts on leaving it alone or changing it?
I'm fine with the 25. I do think we should revisit 7.
Okay, so I think we'll leave the 25 in place. And then let's go back to 7. I think we have sometimes two options. 3. Either just make it real property, period. Make it property, period, or make it real property and personal property worth more than X to deal with the...
Is $50 easier for people in their head because it's a very pronounced rule that I think most public servants.
Are you back to 1 and 2?
Yeah, I'm just thinking this. Most public servants won't really appreciate this. This is not something we've done heavy education on.
The $25 is something we have done quite a bit of education on. That's been for a long time. And the $50 gift rule, I think we're...
And I don't think public servants actually ever talk about $25.
Right, but as a practical matter, the $50 only applies to us. So many agencies have $0 gift rules that the $50 is just an academic thing because like more agencies that we go to have zero rules. And I think that's, I mean, it's a spoiler alert, that the board, when we tackle the gift rules, we'll be thinking about along the lines to match what's going on in the rest of the city.
So the trend in the other agencies is to go even further.
Yes,
Zero.
to 0.
Right.
I mean, almost every agency we train at has $0 gift rules for all kinds of reasons, because they deal with the public, because they deal with finances, because they deal with vendors.
Do they have separate rules on loans and purchase and sales?
Many agencies prohibit financial transactions of the workplace. I think they have less rules about what happens outside of work versus the conflicts of interest laws that deal with everything all over the place.
So where are we on 25 versus 50? I think we're still at 25. And I think that's where we are. I mean, it sounds like if we're going to a vote, if we were to vote, it would be something like 3-2 possibly. I'm inclined to do the 25. I get the idea possibly of inflation adjustment, but we're not doing that on a regular basis. Possibly when we put this out for public comments, we might get comments one way or the other, that it's either too low or too high, and maybe that will give us a chance to reflect in light of any comments that we get. So I'm inclined to leave it, because this is, again, consistent with the idea that it's sort of codifying our current practices, and leave that. On the 7, again, shared ownership of something. The original was real property, which I think apparently tracks what we've actually done in the past. There's, I think, a plausible argument to think that these cars and boats are often are personal property of significant value that is often is frequently their shared ownership. Well, that's what's not implausible. I was adding intellectual property. I don't know if that actually comes up much. And so the question is, go back to real property, strike out the real limitation, or have some hybrid of real property plus personal property with a value of more than X. And I'm not sure I know what the X is.
I have a suggestion on that, which is, given that the board's experience has been with real property thus far, that the rule be promulgated as real property, with the understanding that the rule also says that it is it's an include but not limited to list.
Right.
And when we get that case and the board has the opportunity to consider it with real facts, then the board can deal with that case and also then consider adding another item onto this list or amending number 7 to correspond.
I'm just concerned people look at this list and see real property. They think personal property is okay. And maybe they'll go beyond that. That's what the rule is for, but I think I understand. Now, what would be shared ownership of property below $100,000? What do people own in common? What would they own in common other than something substantial like a car?
Also, that wouldn't be scooped up otherwise. Like if you're cohabiting, you may own a bike together. So that I think you're going to scoop up. If it's low in value on the personal property side, there's probably some other relationship at play that caused you to be co-owning that in the first place.
I mean, I think your question, Jeff, goes to the point of Ethan's suggestion, is that we don't have, the board hasn't seen those examples. It just hasn't come up. We haven't seen enforcement cases, we haven't gotten advice questions on it. So we don't have situations where the board has struggled with, well, does this feel like a business or financial relationship because the item is only $75 or $750 or those kinds of things. We just haven't seen it.
No, I hear you. I do like your approach, Ethan, but there's a tension here between the goal here is to codify our AOs precedent into the rules, but then Jeff's point is pretty common sense. So I'm struggling with, and I said earlier, when in doubt, if we don't have a prior precedent, maybe we shouldn't include it. That was item 10. But I'm wondering if maybe we could craft a very common sense line. Leave in real property because we know that and that's based on precedent. But a car and a boat, to me, seems pretty straightforward. I don't see how any set of facts could ever not rule that violates, not find that doesn't violate. So I'm wondering if we can come up with something that addresses Jeff's point, which is fairly straightforward, even though it's not necessarily grounded in explicit precedent.
I do think we would then say something like shared ownership of real property or a personal property worth more than. I wouldn't want to start doing car and boat, but what about jewelry? That's also, what if, I don't know, they go to an auction together and buy something of value together. once we go down the road of personal property, I don't know that I don't think it makes any sense to say car or boat as opposed to personal property. And an airplane.
Also,
Or,
you're
you know,
scooping up, it's already in other things. If you go to the auction, then it's a purchase of more than $25. If you have the
Well,
boat
those I think
car-
purchase from each other. I thought that A2 was about purchase or sale from each other,
Yes.
not purchasing from Christie's.
That's not covered by that.
I
Or
would say.
painting.
Right.
I mean, I would be, like, to me, the deal here would be to say share ownership on the assumption, that Eric is right, that we want to, or all the ownership of real property, even if it's a lot underwater somewhere that was bought by mistake, or where the mortgage is worth more than the property, and add personal property worth more than, and I'm going to say $100. I am not wedded to $100, but $100 strikes me as something of significance.
Would we want to say any other property rather than personal to capture the issue?
Or of any other property valued at more than $100.
Would you say it's substantial value?
But then what is that?
Well, that-
I think we're better off putting in a number.
You mean in the same number 7, real property or any other property
Yes.
valued at more?
I can believe
I mean, I could say 50, I could say 100. I think, I wouldn't go above 100. I mean, I think that's, at that point, we're getting, feel like an auctioneer, you know, why is
I like the adding it into that same one.
So,
that. I go to 100.
let's say $100. Okay, any more comments on section 3? Sections 4 and 5 are simply deletions of the old 114 and 115 and holding them for the future. And so now, I think, going back to what Fernando was a few minutes ago, sort of general comments about the whole thing, comments and questions about the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think before we get into that, we need to do a recap of the process and what's next. I know after the next process, as we said, it's the long time.
Yes.
What exactly? We said the commentary.
Yes.
Then what happened?
It's reviewed by the law department. To the extent that they have any sort of questions or issues, they will raise that with staff. To the extent that would require any substantive changes, it comes back to the board for further review and your comments and approval before those get approved. But once the law department approves it, it's going through the mayor's office of operations for a plain language check. If that's approved, we post it, and the open meeting, the notice and comment period is where we will have an open meeting. There will be comments that we will receive from the public. And once that notice and comment period is concluded, it comes back to the board where there will be another open meeting, and the board can enact it. Which is published in the city record, and it becomes effective, I believe, there's some number of days after it's published again in the city record.
So our communication to the public of what we're doing is basically Exhibit 1.
Yes. So that is both the notice that is going to be published in the city record for the notice and comment period, and it will also be with whatever changes are necessary to final version published in the city record, whereupon the rule will be effective.
Is there, again, to use language that the federal district uses, some kind of explanation and justification that gets across? In some sense, this is almost a recodification. I mean, obviously, Chapter 4 is literally a recodification, and these new materials are, in some sense, a codification of, for the most part, not exclusively a codification of existing practice. Will that all be explained in some place for the public?
Right, that's Exhibit 1.
That's
Right,
Statement of basic.
Yeah, that's our statement of basic intentions, where we explain our authority to enact these rules and some of the history, including citing the advisory opinions.
In some sense, what's not so new, and a handful of these are a little bit new.
Yes.
Further questions?
Yeah, so based on that, my only comment is on page 4 of Exhibit 1. thought maybe we could do a better job of explaining what the actual proposed rule is. So we do it with the other proposed rule, but we don't explain that we're amending the exemption. We're not, we're basically providing a rule that's defining the exemption to 26.111. We do it in the memo, we talk about it, but I don't know if it's very clear on page 4 that that's what we're doing.
Now, let me ask a clarification. When shortly we go and vote on recommended amendments, what we're voting on starts towards the bottom of page 6, or are we voting on the entire document? In other words, are we voting on just the proposed sections, or are we also voting on the statement of basis of purpose? Both. Okay.
So,
Okay.
sorry.
No, okay.
So like if you go to page 6, lines 8 through 15, I think we do a good job of explaining the 14 U rule. I would think we might want to have something similar to that on page 4.
Can we vote on basically a directive to revise the basis of, the statement of basis of purpose without actually seeing it? I mean, because for the changes to the rules themselves, we have pretty much come up with specific language in the course of the discussion. Can we vote on the statement of basis of purpose without having specific revised language?
I didn't see that. Usually what happens is that you vote and you make this recommendation, and then maybe you come back and then you vote again and say, yes, we accept those changes.
So then we couldn't actually vote on this today if we're going to actually revise this piece.
You can vote on everything else that's been decided and just reserve that last portion of the commentary to then say, here are the revisions that we have, and then vote on that part.
So it would be in some sense a call to approve various things that we discussed with respect to the body of the amendments, but not a vote on the entire of this.
Right, because,
We would table a
Right.
final vote on this to a future meeting.
right, this is all being considered together, not
Okay.
separately plus the commentary.
Okay.
But we would bring that to the board in September.
Right, no, I understand. It's not a huge deal.
Right.
What all we're doing now is voting to propose these rules for public comment.
Well, but we're not actually going to be able to do that because given that we would want to see a revised statement of basis of purpose.
And also the revised rules.
And the revised, well, we could vote on that because we have specific language that we've
Language that we're
approved.
talking about.
We've done that before. And one of our options is to adopt as amendments with the following modifications, and we have been keeping track of the modifications. So we actually have fairly specific text that we've approved for the rules themselves, but we haven't approved any revised text for the statement of basis of purpose, and that, I was just told, is part of what we're voting on, so we can't vote today.
And it's probably good process anyway for the
Okay.
board, since there's been some substantive discussion about the rules, it's good to come back. And we're not, the next step is not the comment, it's back to the law department. So the board will get another sort of bite at the apple once we get feedback from the law department. If they have any substantive comments, the board will need to consider it again to see if the board agrees with whatever comments the law department has made.
So just to foreshadow for a second where this is going to go at the end, we're not there yet. I'm likely to wrap up the discussion with a call to continue discussion at a future board meeting, rather than for a vote. But I am going to summarize what I think we did today in terms of the specific rules before I do that. But before I do that, I'm going to wait see if anybody has any further comments or questions or suggestions. Fernando, I'm going to suggest if you have specific thoughts about it, you want that revised, you might want to send those in. Okay. I hadn't focused on that at all, so if you have specific language you're thinking of or specific ideas for language, why don't you send it?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, actually, we
I'm
can't.
sorry, if you have any comments you want to share with us, you need to share them with us.
Well, I can, very straightforward, I think what you did, again, just repeating myself, but what you did on page 6, lines 8 to 15, actually explaining what we're doing.
Right,
Let's just do that for the first one, that's all.
Right, the topic sentence of page 4, line 3, that first sentence, a little more there.
Yeah,
That's
just
what
say
you're
what
looking for.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because the rule is also kind of weird because the language of the rule says it defines the firm and other form of enterprise, and the second half talks about the exemptions.
Yeah.
And someone kind of just looking at it cold doesn't really get that.
Any further discussion of the draft in front of us before I recap what I think we proposed as changes? And I will recap what I think we proposed as changes. For section 2, on page 18, line 4, we're going to change means to includes but is not limited to any of the following entities. For section 3, page 21, line 4, we're going to put between a superior and a subordinate in the title. Drop down to roughly line 14, subsection 7. I guess we would either add it there or add a new section and then renumber what follows. We weren't precise on that. And shared ownership of personal pet property valued at more than $100. That could either be part of 7 or I guess it could either be anything renumbered. Not much turns on that.
Sorry, you want personal property or any other?
Any other property worth more valued at $100.
I would put it in the same one, real property or any other property.
Okay, yeah. Then dropping down to 12, we have revised language on the 10. I'm sorry, 10. We're removing 10. Absolutely, that's right. We're removing 10. And dropping down to 12, establishing or serving as a trustee of a trust in which one of them or a person associated with one of them is a beneficiary. Again, that's subject to further taking with the language if you think that this needs anywhere to be made clear. But that's the thrust of it. On 13, instead of and another public servants, we're just going to change the payment of each other's recurring expenses. And this is on page 22, and then also on page 22, line 7, B1, delete communally. And I wasn't sure we decided to add fairly or just delete
No, just
communally.
delete.
Just delete communally. Those are all, and then plus making revisions to the statement of basis of purpose, with particular focus to kind of setting up and introducing what's going on with new section 2. At this point, I will call for a motion that the board continue this discussion at a future board meeting. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? All opposed? Right. The motion for continuation of discussion has passed. And that is the end of our open meeting.